Gunnar stood at the center of the mobile command bunker, arms crossed, expression set in stone as he keyed into the secure line. The encrypted signal connected, and after a brief delay, Sophia's face flickered onto the hollow screen, her expression already taut with irritation. Regan stood behind her, arms folded, his sharp eyes narrowing the moment she saw Gunnar. "Gunnar," Sophia said, her voice tight. "Nice of you to finally check in. You've got about 10 seconds to explain why I'm just now hearing about a full-blown assault you're about to launch?" Gunnar didn't even blink. "Because I wasn't going to risk your mole leaking it." Sophia's jaw tensed. "Damn it, Gunnar!" "No," he cut in, voice hard. "You know damn well I wasn't bringing Echo in until I was sure we had a clean shot. You still haven't flushed out whoever's feeding Black Dawn intel, which means I couldn't afford to clue you in until now." She exhaled sharply, rubbing her temples, her frustration evident. Regan, however, hadn't taken her eyes off Gunnar, studying him carefully. "You really think you can pull this off without backup?" Regan asked, measured but skeptical. "I don't think," Gunnar replied bluntly. "I know. My team's in position, our recon is solid, and we're moving before Draven pulls another trick." Sophia's eyes flashed. "You think this justifies cutting Echo out? We have operatives in the field who should have been looped in days ago. Hell, even if you don't trust my command structure, you could have at least given me something. Instead, I have to find out when you're already committed to an op." She shook her head. "You're asking for a lot of faith, Gunnar." He let out a slow breath, barely holding back his own irritation. "I'm not asking for anything. I'm telling you what's happening. You want to put Echo Division on alert? Fine. But this is happening with or without your approval." Sophia's nostrils flared, but she didn't argue. She knew Gunnar well enough to realize that once he'd set something in motion, there was no stopping it. Regan finally broke the silence. "You're expecting pushback?" Gunnar nodded once. "Once we hit them, Draven's going to counter fast. I need Echo Division on alert for any movements outside of Murkdust. If he has contingencies, if he's repositioning forces somewhere else, I need to know. That's where you come in." Sophia let out a long breath, then glanced at Regan. She met her look, clearly weighing their options before nodding. "All right. We'll monitor everything and relay any intelligence we pick up. But Gunnar," Regan's voice lowered slightly, herb tone carrying a warning, "if this goes sideways, don't expect us to clean up the mess." Gunnar smirked, but there was no humour in it. "Wouldn't dream of it." He cut the line. Sophia let out a frustrated sigh and turned to Regan. "You believe him?" Regan hesitated for only a moment before answering. "He's got his flaws, but he's never wrong about a fight, and if he says they're moving in now, that means we're already late." She exhaled sharply. "Then we better be ready. Get every available Echo Division unit watching the other realms. If Draven so much as breathes the wrong way, I want to know about it." Regan nodded, already keying in the orders. The war had begun. The room was silent for a long moment after the call ended. Then, from the corner, the CSM let out a low whistle. "Damn, Gunnar. Ever thought about a career in diplomacy?" The sarcasm was thick, but there was something else underneath it. Respect. Gunnar exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. "Not my style." The CSM folded his arms. "I figured. But hell, I've seen officers get their asses chewed for half the things you just pulled, and you walked away still calling the shots." Darren chuckled, leaning against the wall. "Yeah, well, that's Gunnar for you. Pisses people off, but somehow they still end up doing what he wants." The CSM nodded thoughtfully, watching Gunnar for a long moment. "If Echo's really got a leak, you were right to keep this locked down. That kind of breach gets people killed. And from what I just saw, I'd say you've got bigger problems than just an op going sideways." Gunnar met his gaze, his expression unreadable. "We've got work to do. Get the men ready. We move soon." The CSM gave him a curt nod. "Roger that." He hesitated for a moment before adding, "And for what it's worth, you've got my respect, Gunnar, even if you're a mean bastard." Gunnar smirked. "Wouldn't dream of being anything else. Now get moving." With the exterior of the bunker secured and forward positions established, the remainder of the elven forces arrived through the portal. Clora was already waiting, arms crossed as the 80 additional elven warriors stepped into formation, their movements disciplined and precise. She strode forward, meeting the detachment leader, an elf named Valeth, who offered a respectful nod. Commander Phelan, our forces are in position. Orders? Clora gave him a sharp nod. We're integrating into the defensive perimeter. Your squads will reinforce the forward observation points we've set up. I want teams shadowing any potential Black Dawn patrols, but no engagements unless necessary. We're waiting for the op to begin, and I don't want them catching wind of what's coming. Valeth signalled to his warriors, and they dispersed seamlessly, disappearing into the ruins and high ground positions. The elves moved like wraiths, silent and unseen, slipping into position with an efficiency only centuries of training could produce. Darren watched from the side, letting out a low whistle. Damn, makes our recon teams look like amateurs. Clora smirked but didn't respond. Instead, she turned her focus back to Valeth. You and your best fighters stay close. If Black Dawn gets wise and sends reinforcements, I want them stopped before they even see the bunker. Valeth gave a slight bow. Understood. We'll hold the line. With their positions set, Clora keyed her comms to Gunnar. All elven forces are deployed and in position. We're ready when you are. Gunnar's voice came through calm but firm. Affirmative. As final preparations were being made, a medic from the 5077th arrived, escorted by 2 engineers. Darren, catching sight of the unfamiliar face, immediately stalked over, irritation clear on his face. "Who the hell is this?" he demanded, eyes shifting between the medic and the soldiers who had brought him. The CSM stepped forward, arms crossed. "I sent for him. Thought we might need another set of hands in case things go sideways." Gunnar's eyes narrowed, but before he could speak, Jewel stepped in. "Is he trained? Combat experience?" The medic straightened. "Yes, ma'am. 2 tours overseas, trauma certified. I know my way around a war zone." The CSM held his gaze steady on Gunnar. "He's one of mine, trustworthy. You're going to need more than one medic out there." Gunnar exhaled slowly before nodding. "Fine. But he works under Jewel. Her word is final. Understood." The medic gave a crisp nod. "Understood, sir." Jewel smirked. "Guess you're stuck with me then. Hope you don't mind getting your hands dirty." With that settled, final preparations resumed. The clock was ticking. The war room was tense, every operative and soldier standing by as Gunnar prepared to give the go order. The command centre buzzed with readiness, the weight of the coming battle pressing down on everyone in the room. Then the portal flared. Not the controlled, tactical opening the team had expected. This was something else entirely. A wave of radiant energy surged through the room, crackling with raw magic. The air turned charged, electric, making the hair on the back of Gunnar's neck stand up. The light was almost blinding, pure and absolute. And then she stepped through. Aeliana Vale. But not as they had ever seen her before. She was clad in full guardian armour, a sight none of them had ever witnessed. Unlike the flowing elven robes she normally wore, this was regal battle armour, glowing with ancient magic, inscribed with runes of power and balance. Her very presence demanded respect and reverence. The elven warriors in the room reacted instantly. Some dropped to a knee, heads bowed. Others straightened, their expressions shifting from hardened warriors to something bordering on awe. She was a guardian of Alfheim, the highest honour an elf could achieve, a role that existed beyond kings and councils. Aeliana was here for one reason, to maintain balance, and she was radiating power. Gunnar didn't move at first. He took her in, the light reflecting off her polished armour, the way the very air seemed to bend around her presence. His voice, when he finally spoke, was steady but low. "Hell of an entrance." Aeliana's piercing blue eyes locked onto his. "I am here to observe." The room was dead silent. Even Darren, normally the first to crack a joke, said nothing. He just exchanged a glance with Clora, who gave a barely perceptible nod. They had seen this moment coming for a long time. Eli's fingers twitched against the workbench, as if she were resisting the urge to scan Aeliana's armor for magical properties. She had seen Aeliana's power before, but never like this. The humans, the soldiers from the 5077th Engineers, stood rigid. Their world had already been shattered by everything they had seen. But this was something else entirely. A god walking among them. But Gunnar wasn't just another soldier. He met her gaze, unflinching. "You're not just here to observe." His voice was quieter now. "Are you?" Aeliana's expression softened just slightly. "You stand at the edge of something vast, Gunnar." She took a step forward, closing the space between them. The glow of her armor illuminated his face, casting strange reflections against the darkened war room. Her next words were for him alone. "Do not be Gunnar," she whispered. "Be Clora." His eye narrowed slightly, his expression tightening. "You want me to sit back and strategize instead of leading from the front," he said, tone unreadable. "I want you to trust your pack," she corrected. "I want you to command, not just fight." There was a flicker of something in his gaze. Aeliana had always been the only one who could speak to him like this, the only one who dared to push past the walls he built. Clora's jaw tightened slightly. She knew exactly what Aeliana meant. She had fought beside Gunnar long enough to know that his instinct would be to take the heaviest blows himself. But this time, that wasn't the answer. Aeliana turned slightly, glancing at the room at the warriors preparing for battle. Then she looked back at him, and for a moment, the glow of the Guardian armor seemed to dim just slightly. She reached out just for a second, her fingers brushing against his calloused, cybernetic hand. "Come back to me," she whispered. Gunnar's jaw clenched. He didn't speak, didn't move, because if he said something it might break the moment. Instead, he gave a single sharp nod. That was enough. Aeliana let her fingers slip away, stepping back into the light of the war room, the Guardian armor once again blazing with celestial energy. Then, just like that, she turned, moving to stand near the holographic display, silent, watchful. Her presence had shifted everything. The battle hadn't even begun, but the war had already changed. In the silence that followed, Darren's gaze flickered toward the corner of the room. Leaning against the wall, almost forgotten, was an AT-4 anti-tank launcher. His eyes narrowed, lips twitching as he slowly strolled over, keeping it casual. Eli spotted him first. "Darren, no." "What?" he asked innocently, running a hand along the launcher like a prized possession. "I mean, who just leaves this beauty unattended?" Gunnar sighed heavily. "Put it back." Darren slung it over his shoulder instead. "Nah, I think I'll hold on to it. Never know when we'll need to, you know. Vaporize something." Clora crossed her arms. "And you think now is the time to grab an anti-tank weapon?" "When is it not the time?" Jewel didn't even look up from her medical gear. "If you fire that thing underground, I swear." Gunnar exhaled slowly, rubbing his temple. "Fine, but if you kill us all, I'm haunting your ass." Darren patted the launcher affectionately. "See? He gets it." And just like that, the AT-4 was coming with them. Gunnar's voice cut through the charged air of the war room. It was time. "Everyone, move to primary positions," he ordered. "We hit hard, fast, and clean. No mistakes." The room erupted into motion. DeSera slung her enchanted .50 caliber sniper rifle over her shoulder, her gaze sharp and calculating. At her side, a combat engineer assigned as her spotter double-checked his rangefinder and adjusted their gear. "We move now," she muttered, her tone clipped. Together they slipped out into the shadows, making their way toward the high ground overlooking the battlefield. The sniper's perch was carefully selected, a position that provided a full view of the fortress and the Black Dawn patrol routes. As they climbed into place, DeSera scanned the area through her scope, marking out priority targets. "We've got multiple hostiles on rotation. Let's get these bastards dialed in. Ashley, her two 40B machine guns strapped across her chest, moved into position with her designated engineer ammo bearer following closely behind. Beta trotted alongside her, ears perked, eyes sharp. The gunner and her assistant moved into a defensive position, fortifying a natural bottleneck in the terrain. "This is it," Ashley muttered, setting up the bipod and locking the belt into place. "When it goes loud, we don't stop until gunner calls it." Her engineer, noticing the size of Beta, gave her a wary glance. "That thing ever bite?" Ashley smirked. "Only if I tell her to." Bianca spread out her stealth mode recon drones, activating their silent flight patterns. One of the 5,077th engineers, a specialist in drone surveillance, had been assigned to assist her, monitoring the real-time data feeds. "All right," Bianca murmured, eyes flicking between screens. "We've got multiple LP/OP sites, marking them now." The digital map updated in real time as the drones tagged hidden threats, enemy positions, and potential breaches in the fortress defences. Bianca's partner glanced at the data. "That's a lot of bodies," he muttered, "and a hell of a lot of guns." She smirked. "Good thing we've got plenty of bullets." Moving like shadows through the ruins, Shade, Katrina, and Lyra closed in on their targets. The Black Dawn LP/OP teams had been marked on Bianca's tactical grid, and now it was time to take them out, quietly. Lyra took point, leading them toward the nearest outpost where 3 Black Dawn operatives were stationed. Their positions were standard, one keeping watch, one resting, and one on comms. Shade held up a fist, signalling a halt. He scanned the positions, then looked at Katrina and Lyra. 3-man teams, same setup on each LPOP, he murmured. "How you want to do this?" Lyra smirked, already drawing a blade. "Quickly," Katrina nodded. "Let's spread out. We hit all 3 sites in sync. No alarms, no mess." The 3 operatives moved like phantoms, each one slipping toward their assigned LP/OP. One by one, the Black Dawn lookouts would fall before they even knew they were being hunted. Gunner's voice came sharp and direct over the comms. "Pack! On me!" Rose, Clora, and Omega fell in step, moving swiftly. Gunner and Alpha took point, both radiating controlled aggression. The wolves padded silently beside them, their presence a grim promise of what was to come. As they moved out, Gunner locked eyes with the CSM and gave him a firm nod. "You're in charge of the war room." No further instructions were needed. The battle was in motion. Darren formed up with 2 engineer sappers, their packs loaded with breaching charges. Eli and Alatheris moved alongside them, their task clear: handle any magical interference that could complicate the breach. Darren adjusted his grip on Thunderstrike, his shotgun locked and loaded. "All right, Keebler," he muttered to Eli, flashing a smirk. "You make the magic go away, we'll make the doors go boom." Eli rolled her eyes, already scanning for potential arcane threats. The fortress would fall, but first they had to get inside. Gunner's voice crackled over the comms. "Unleash the dogs." With that, Shade, Katrina, and Lyra sprang into action. Every movement was precise, every strike deadly. At the first LP/OP site, Lyra moved like a wraith, her blade slipping between ribs before the Black Dawn soldier could make a sound. 1 down. Shade materialized from the darkness behind another, wrapping an arm around the target's throat and driving his dagger into the base of the skull. 2 down. Katrina ghosted through the shadows, her target never realizing she was there until the blade cut through his spine. 3 down. They regrouped, pressing forward to the next position. At the second site, a guard turned, sensing something. Too late. Lyra's dagger severed his throat in a clean, silent motion. Shade and Katrina followed suit, dispatching their marks with swift, merciless precision. They moved in perfect synchronization, eliminating each LP/OP site with chilling efficiency. 1 mistake, 1 misstep, and alarms would have sounded. But they were flawless. As the final outpost fell, Shade keyed his mic. "All clear." The battlefield belonged to the pack. With the LPOPS eliminated, Gunnar, Clora and Rose formed the spearhead. Katrina's confirmation came through the comms, and Gunnar wasted no time. "Advance!" DeSera's voice crackled over the radio. "Give me a target." Gunnar's gaze flicked to the battlefield as Bianca's drones fed live data onto their tactical HUDs. "Find me their highest value asset and drop it," Gunnar ordered. Bianca adjusted the drones, zooming in on key movements. "Copy that. Once rounds start flying, I'll let the attack drones loose." The strike force moved forward. The real battle was about to begin. The elven scouts picked up movement first, shadows shifting along the flanks, barely perceptible among the ruins. "Contact left," one of the elves hissed over the comms. Multiple hostiles moving into position. The wolves growled low, sensing the shift before any human could. Then the fortress erupted. A piercing alarm blared, its echoes slicing through the air like a blade. The moment stretched taut. Then hell broke loose. Bianca's voice came over the comms, sharp with urgency. "It's a trap. Black Dawn forces are pouring out of the fortress, multiple squads converging on your position." Gunnar's stomach clenched. Draven knew they were coming. "Take cover!" he roared, his cybernetic arm flexing as he ripped Starbreaker from his shoulder. The assault rifle's grenade launcher attachment gleamed in the dim light, a promise of destruction. Alpha and Omega snarled, their hackles raised, sensing the bloodshed about to unfold. The first wave of Black Dawn troopers surged forward, weapons raised, the air filled with the roar of gunfire and the crackling of magic. The battlefield was ablaze. Desera's rifle cracked, and the first Black Dawn officer collapsed mid-command, a clean hole through his skull. The battlefield exploded into violence. Ashley's 240B barked to life, cutting down a squad of advancing troopers. Her assistant gunner fed belts of ammunition, their position turning into a brutal stronghold. Eli's voice rang out. "Magical interference incoming. I've got energy signatures. Left flank." Lightning lanced through the battlefield, one of Black Dawn's warlocks hurling arcs of deadly magic. Eli countered with a pulse grenade, the detonations sending a ripple through the energy field, knocking the warlock backward. Gunnar led from the front, Starbreaker bucking in his grip as he unleashed controlled bursts of fire. His cybernetic arm absorbed the recoil effortlessly, allowing him to transition from target to target with ruthless precision. The grenade launcher thudded, sending an explosive round into an advancing squad, their screams lost in the detonation. Omega and Alpha tore into the enemy ranks, their feral rage unmatched. The wolves worked as a deadly unit, their bond to their alphas fueling them with supernatural precision. Darren's shotgun boomed, enchanted slugs punching through armor. He turned to Eli and Alatheris. "You two better start pulling some magic out of your ass." Alatheris smirked, raising his hands. "Ask, and you shall receive." A wave of magical force erupted, sending Black Dawn soldiers tumbling. Clora seized the moment, leading a flanking maneuver with her elven warriors, blades and arrows cutting down enemy reinforcements. Bianca's drones swooped in, targeting heavy weapons squads and disrupting Black Dawn's formations. The battle was a whirlwind of destruction. Yet, even as Black Dawn forces fell, more poured from the fortress, their numbers seemingly endless. Gunnar growled into his comms. "We need that breach open now. Darren's status?" Darren gritted his teeth, slamming another slug into a trooper's chest. "Working on it. We're pinned. Give us cover." As the firefight intensified, the pack and elven warriors tightened their lines, forming an unbreakable defensive wall. Their combined firepower cut down wave after wave of Black Dawn troops, but it wasn't enough. In the war room, Aeliana watched through the drone feeds, her hands clenched tightly behind her back. Her glowing blue eyes flickered as she studied the battlefield. Then Bianca's voice came through, tense and urgent. "New contacts incoming, better armor, heavier weapons. Black Dawn elites are on the field." Gunnar barely had time to register before a squad of Black Dawn elites pushed through the chaos. Their enchanted armor provided added durability, but the pack's enchanted rounds still punched through with enough force. Desera lined up a shot, her voice calm, over comms. Not so tough. Her rifle cracked, dropping an elite before he could react. Ashley's 240B barked, tearing into their ranks with enchanted rounds. The sheer volume of fire shredded armor and sent troopers collapsing into the dirt. Eli's voice cracked through the comms. "Watch out! Their rifles are enhanced. We can't take direct hits from those things." Omega lunged at one of the elites, but the trooper sidestepped, unloading an arcane-infused burst at point-blank range. The massive wolf barely dodged, his fur singed from the energy. Gunner fired Starbreaker's grenade launcher, the explosion engulfing two of them, sending them sprawling, but they regrouped instantly, falling into defensive formations. A deadly realization set in. These weren't mindless grunts. They were Black Dawn's trained soldiers. And they were ready for war. In the war room, Aeliana's expression darkened as she watched the battlefield unfold. The Pack's forces were holding, but the enemy was pushing harder than anticipated. She tapped a rune on the console, establishing a secure link. Melorian. The image of the elven High Guardian flickered to life, his sharp gaze narrowing at her expression. Aeliana, it is not yet time to act. She narrowed her eyes. Earth is on the brink. If they fall, the balance breaks. Melorian exhaled, his hands steepled in thought. The scales must be maintained. You must hold. Aeliana's lips pressed into a thin line. She stared at him for a long moment, then muttered under her breath. To use the words of Darren, bite me. She severed the connection, turning back toward the battle map, her jaw clenched. The war room was silent for a moment. Then Caleb let out a low chuckle. Damn, remind me never to piss her off. Argoz, leaning against the table, tilted her head. I like her style. Evelyn gave a half smile, crossing her arms. So, what now? We sit on our hands while they're out there bleeding. The CSM exhaled, rubbing a hand down his face. Number, we stay ready. The moment she acts, we'll be moving too. Caleb nodded, voice more serious now. They've got this. Gunner, Clora, Rose, they don't go down easy. We hold the line here. When it's time, we hit back twice as hard. Aeliana's fingers hovered over the controls, her decision settled. She was done waiting. In the war room, Aeliana severed the link with Melorian. Her expression was set. She was done waiting. Without another word, she turned and walked straight into the portal. The battlefield shifted the moment she arrived. Draped in her radiant guardian armor, she strode forward, her presence unmistakable. The elves saw her first, and the tide of battle seemed to pause. Then, the magic exploded outward. Aeliana lifted her hands, and arcs of shimmering energy coiled through the air, forming a protective barrier that stopped incoming Black Dawn fire in its tracks. Then she advanced. With a flick of her wrist, raw arcane force swept through the enemy ranks, sending Black Dawn soldiers crashing through the air like rag dolls. The elves rallied to her, their formation tightening, their morale surging. They followed her like a beacon. Black Dawn soldiers rushed her, but she didn't slow. Where they fired, their bullets dissolved mid-air. Where they charged, they were cut down by unseen forces. She moved like an unstoppable force of nature, magic crackling around her, walking through the enemy as if they weren't even there. For the first time, Black Dawn hesitated. Gunner, breathless from the chaos, muttered over the comms. I'll be damned. Clora, beside him, let out a smirk. You just might be. Aeliana's voice rang out, cutting through the battlefield, strong, unwavering. For Alfheim. The elves answered in unison, voices like thunder. For Alfheim. Darren, bloodied and grinning, pushed himself up, raising his shotgun high. For Earth, he roared. The engineers and soldiers echoed the cry, voices joining the battle's fury. With Aeliana drawing most of Black Dawn's forces, Gunner, Clora, Rose, Darren, and the engineers moved toward the fortress. The engineers quickly began setting up to breach the outer door, preparing charges as the rest of the team covered their advance. The real fight was only beginning. Suddenly, the portal within the war room flared violently, and the very air in the room seemed to hum with power. A commanding presence stepped through, Melorian, clad in full battle regalia, his piercing gaze sweeping across the room. Behind him, 111 warriors followed, their armor gleaming, weapons at the ready. His expression was carved from stone, eyes crackling with barely contained anger. "Where is Aeliana?" Before anyone could answer, Caleb leaned casually against the table, arms crossed. "Oh, you know, just walked straight into the middle of a war zone, like a normal, sane person." Melorian's eyes narrowed. "She did what?" Evelyn coughed lightly. "Yeah, she kinda went to hell with waiting and stepped right into the fight. And, she's winning." The elven warriors behind Melorian exchanged uncertain glances, but he exhaled sharply, reining in his temper. His gaze fell on the tactical display, watching as Aeliana moved like a force of nature, rallying the elves and tearing through Black Dawn ranks with ease. He let out a slow breath. So be it. Then, with a glance at the gathered team, he straightened. "We fight." Myalorian led his warriors into battle. The battlefield surged as the elven reinforcements crashed into Black Dawn's flank, Myalorian taking a stance next to Aeliana. Together they moved like an unstoppable force, magic and steel intertwining as they carved a path through the enemy ranks. The engineers moved quickly, setting the final charges along the reinforced door. The sappers worked with efficiency, planting breaching charges in precise locations, their hands steady despite the chaos outside. Gunnar gave the nod. "Blow it." A controlled explosion ripped through the door, sending a shockwave through the air. The reinforced metal crumpled inward, debris scattering as the entryway lay open. "Move!" Gunnar ordered, leading the charge inside. Eli stepped through, immediately raising her scanner. The readings were unlike anything she had seen before. "Something's wrong," she muttered. "The ley lines. They're being pulled here." Alatheris swept his hand through the air, his own magical senses flaring. This isn't natural. Someone's redirecting the magical flow directly into the fortress. The energy in the air was thick, almost suffocating. The deeper they moved, the more intense the pull became. It was as if the very foundation of magic was bending to the will of something inside. Darren, gripping his shotgun, frowned. "That ain't normal, right?" Eli's eyes flickered between readings. "Number this is deliberate. Someone built something to do this." The hallway widened into a vast chamber, its walls lined with intricate machinery and glowing conduits that pulsed like veins, feeding energy into a single focal point. At the center of the chamber stood a massive construct, metallic and arcane in design, glowing with eerie blue and violet energy. Runes covered its surface, and the air around it hummed with unstable power. Eli's voice was hushed. "This is it. This is what's pulling the ley lines." Alatheris ran his fingers over the air, tracing the currents of magic. "They're using this to tap directly into the realm's lifeblood. This is siphoning power on a scale I've never seen." Rose stepped forward, her eyes locking onto the intricate patterns and structure of the machine. Her breath hitched. "This is Draven's work," she murmured. "I recognize the design, but it was never more than a theory when I was with him." She traced a hand over the engravings, her expression a mix of awe and unease. "He actually built it." Darren, setting his AT-4 launcher down beside him, arched a brow. "Great, and I'm guessing it's not some fancy light show." Rose exhaled, regaining her composure. "Number, this thing is designed to manipulate ley lines. Forcefully. If we shut it down the wrong way, we could trigger a backlash." Gunnar narrowed his eye. "Can we shut it down?" Eli's expression darkened as she studied the energy flow. "Maybe. But if we do, we better be ready for whatever happens next." The team exchanged glances. Whatever this machine was, it was a keystone to Black Dawn's plans, and dismantling it was going to be anything but simple. A mechanical hiss echoed through the chamber as a hidden side door slid open, releasing a slow gust of chilled air. Gunner's hand clenched tighter around Starbreaker, his single blue eye locked onto the darkened threshold as figures emerged, their silhouettes stark against the eerie glow of the ley line machine. The first to step through was a figure etched into Rose's nightmares, and Gunner's list of men marked for death. Draven. He moved with practiced arrogance, his dark combat armor polished, his long coat flowing behind him. The cold amusement in his gaze lingered on them like a vulture circling carrion. Well, well, I was wondering when you'd get here. At his side, Trinity stalked forward, Gunner's old assistant turned traitor, now draped in Black Dawn's finest. Her hair was pulled back into a tight braid, and her piercing eyes found Gunner immediately. A smirk touched her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. She looked different, harder. A warrior who had nothing left to lose. Behind them, 10 enhanced Black Dawn troopers fanned out in formation, their movements precise, calculated. And then, the real threat emerged. A towering super trooper, his armor bulkier, plated with additional reinforcements, a voidstone core pulsing at the center of his chest. His helmet obscured his face entirely, a single visor glowing red. The air around him felt wrong, charged with unnatural power. Darren let out a slow exhale. Well, this just got interesting. Rose's stomach twisted. She had known Draven had plans for something like this, but she never thought he'd actually build it. The ley lines, the machine, the enhancements. He had been playing the long game, and now they were standing in the center of it. Draven took a casual step forward, his voice dripping with confidence. I'll admit, I thought my men would put up a better fight outside. My elites were supposed to hold you off a little longer, but... He let out a sigh, shaking his head. I suppose even trained dogs get lucky. Gunner didn't move, but his jaw ticked. Trinity's gaze never left him, her fingers flexing at her sides, as if expecting him to launch at her at any moment. You've got two options, Draven continued, his smirk widening. Lay down your weapons and I might let you live. He tilted his head toward Rose. Well, most of you. Rose's fingers twitched at her sides, but her face remained impassive. Then, slowly, a smirk tugged at her lips, a cruel, knowing smile. Draven, she purred, tilting her head. You look different. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he masked it quickly. Rose took a step forward, casually inspecting his face, her smirk growing sharper. Ah, she mused. That's right. You were on your knees last time. Begging, if I remember correctly. Draven's expression darkened. His fingers twitched at his side, his amusement fading. I do hope the mark healed well. Rose's voice was velvet, edged with venom. That little rose I branded into your cheek. It suited you. Darren let out a low chuckle. Damn, Rose, you been giving souvenirs? Draven's jaw clenched, his posture stiffening. The soldiers around him tensed, feeling the shift in energy. Trinity, however, smirked slightly, as if amused by the exchange. Draven exhaled through his nose, the smirk returning, but this time it was forced. Funny, you always did have a sharp tongue. His voice lowered, colder now. Shame I'm going to cut it out. Rose simply tilted her head, unbothered. You can try. Gunner finally exhaled a sharp breath, his voice gravelly, cold. Yeah? And what's option 2? Draven's grin widened. You die screaming. The room held still for a fraction of a second. Then chaos erupted. The flickering tactical display drew Caleb's attention, a momentary blip, then nothing. He frowned, leaning closer to the monitoring station where Bianca's drone feeds mapped the battlefield outside. Everything looked clear. Too clear. Something's not right, he muttered, eyes narrowing as he scanned the perimeter grid. Bianca adjusted the gain on her receiver, brow furrowed. I'm getting interference on the eastern quadrant. Could be nothing. The screen stuttered again, pixels fragmenting before resolving. 3 of her drones had gone dark simultaneously. Shit. Bianca's fingers flew across the keyboard, trying to re-establish connection. Something's jamming my signal. They're using a localized EMP disruptor. The CSM moved toward them, expression sharpening. Deliberate? Before she could answer, a proximity alarm blared. Not from the main entrance, but from a maintenance access point on the eastern side of the bunker. The side they'd thought was secure. "Contact east!" Bianca shouted, abandoning her station and drawing her pistol in one fluid motion. "Side access breach!" The 5,077th soldiers reacted instantly, muscle memory kicking in as they grabbed weapons and moved to defensive positions. The army engineers might have been new to supernatural threats, but they knew combat. Caleb was already in motion, his M4 pressed against his shoulder as he positioned himself near the entrance to the command center. Evelyn fell into position beside him, her hands already glowing with the pale blue shimmer of prepared defensive magic. Argoz stood near the tactical display, eyes wide but stance ready, one hand gripping the dagger at her hip. This wasn't her first fight, but the panic in her eyes betrayed her. She knew exactly who was coming. "It's me," she hissed. "They're here for me." The bunker's reinforced door groaned under impact. Once, twice. On the third hit, it blew inward. 10 Black Dawn troopers poured through the breach, their movements precise and synchronized. These weren't standard soldiers. Their armor bore the elite insignia, and their rifles hummed with the telltale glow of Voidstone enhancements. Caleb didn't hesitate. His M4 barked, enchanted rounds tearing into the lead trooper. The bullets punched through the reinforced armor, dropping the soldier before he could even raise his weapon. "Contact!" he shouted, already sighting his next target. The Black Dawn squad spread out, 4 moving to engage the defenders, while 6 broke formation, driving straight toward Argoz. Their objective was clear. The engineers opened fire, but the Black Dawn soldiers moved with unnerving speed. Energy weapons discharged, filling the air with the scent of ozone and burning metal. Evelyn thrust her hands forward, a shimmering barrier materializing just as the first volley of Black Dawn rifle fire erupted. The energy rounds slammed into the magical shield, crackling with angry blue light as they were absorbed. "I can't hold this long," she shouted, the strain evident in her voice. One of the 5,077th soldiers, Staff Sergeant Miller, broke cover to gain a better firing position. A Black Dawn trooper pivoted, his rifle discharging with an unearthly hum. The energy round struck Miller center mass. There was no blood, no exit wound, just a sudden rigidity as his entire body locked up, muscles seizing as neural pathways shut down. He collapsed to the floor like a toppled statue, eyes wide with terror but unable to move a single muscle. "Man down!" someone shouted. Jewel was already moving, medkit in hand, the combat lifesaver from the 5,077th right beside her. She dropped to her knees beside Miller, immediately assessing. "Neural shutdown," she barked, yanking open her kit. "CLS, get that counteragent in him. Blue vial, right carotid injection." The medic didn't question, simply followed orders, hands steady despite the chaos as he administered the injection. Meanwhile, the 6 troopers pressing toward Argoz met resistance from the CSM and 2 of his engineers, who laid down suppressive fire from behind overturned tables. Argoz backed away, her breath coming in short gasps. She wasn't a warrior like Lyra or a mage like Rose. She was a survivor, a thief, someone who lived by her wits. But with nowhere to run, instinct took over. One of the Black Dawn troopers broke through, closing the distance. His gloved hand shot out, grabbing her cloak, yanking her forward. Argoz didn't hesitate. She drove her dagger straight into his thigh, twisting the blade with vicious precision. The trooper screamed, his grip loosening. Argoz tore herself free and lunged forward, driving the blade up and into his throat. Hot blood sprayed across her face as she ripped the dagger free. The trooper collapsed, gurgling, clutching at his ruined throat. Argoz stood over him, chest heaving, eyes wild with the primal understanding that this was kill or be taken. "Argoz! Down!" Caleb shouted. She dropped instinctively as his M4 thundered. rounds punching through the Black Dawn trooper who had been advancing on her blind side. The battle condensed into brutal close-quarters combat. 2 troopers broke through the line of fire, pushing toward the triage area where Jewel was working desperately to stabilize the fallen soldier. Jewel glanced up, saw the threat, and reacted without hesitation. She yanked her enchanted silver dagger free from its sheath just as the first trooper reached her. The blade glinted in the harsh bunker light as she pivoted, sidestepping his lunge and driving the dagger up under his ribs. The enchantment on the blade activated. Silver light coursed through the trooper's body, and he twitched violently before collapsing. Bianca wasn't so lucky. A Black Dawn trooper closed on her position, knocking her pistol away with an armoured forearm. She ducked the follow-up strike, drawing her combat knife and slashing at her attacker. The blade skittered across his armour but found the gap at his neck, drawing blood. It wasn't a killing blow, but it bought her space. She dove for her fallen weapon, rolled, and came up firing. The first round missed, the second hit his shoulder, but the third caught him square in the face. His helmet shattered, and he dropped. "Argoz, move to me!" Evelyn shouted, her barrier flickering as it absorbed another volley. Argoz darted across the room, ducking as gunfire ripped over her head. 2 more troopers spotted her movement and adjusted, closing in. Evelyn saw them coming. Her lips formed words in an ancient elven dialect, and power surged through her outstretched hands. The force spell slammed into the troopers, picking them up and hurling them into a stack of supply crates. Argoz seized the opportunity. She rushed forward, dagger flashing, and slashed across one's throat before he could recover. Blood fountained, and he dropped. The last trooper, seeing his team decimated, turned to flee. Caleb raised his M4, breathed out, and squeezed the trigger. 1 shot, clean. The trooper crumpled mid-stride. And then, silence. The bunker fell still except for the laboured breathing of the defenders and the pained groans of Miller, still partially paralysed on the floor. Caleb moved cautiously among the bodies, making sure the threats were neutralised. "Well," he panted, sweat dripping from his brow. "That was fun." Argoz wiped her bloody dagger on a fallen trooper's uniform, her hands shaking slightly. "This is insane." "No argument here," Evelyn agreed, her face pale from the magical exertion. Jewel didn't even look up from her wounded patient. "Somebody get me another pair of hands. I've got wounded here." One of the 5,077th engineers moved to help her, applying pressure to Miller's shoulder where he'd struck the ground during his fall. The CSM surveyed the carnage, exhaling slowly, his weathered face showing a new kind of understanding. "So, this is what you people deal with every day?" Caleb ejected his magazine, checked his remaining ammunition, and slapped it back in with practiced ease. He smirked. "Nah, sometimes it gets worse."